The glass towers of downtown Los Angeles gleamed under the afternoon sun as Denzel Washington adjusted his tie in the elevator mirror. The prestigious entertainment law firm of Morrison and Associates occupied 3 floors of the building, and today's board meeting would determine the future of several high-profile projects. Beside him, Tom Brady checked his phone one last time before sliding it into his jacket pocket. "Never thought I'd be nervous about a business meeting after all those playoff games," Tom admitted with a wry smile. Denzel chuckled. "Different kind of pressure, my friend, but we've got this." The elevator dinged as they reached the 42nd floor. As the doors opened, they were greeted by the familiar hum of office activity, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, and the distant murmur of conversations. Their destination was the conference room at the end of the hall, where investors and executives were already gathering for the 3 p.m. meeting about their joint production company venture. As they walked through the corridor, lined with awards and photographs of celebrity clients, they passed the janitor's cart positioned near the copy machine. The man behind it was methodically replacing the water in a large plant, humming softly to himself. Miguel Santos had worked at Morrison and Associates for 3 years, arriving before dawn and staying well past sunset. Most employees barely noticed him, but Denzel had always made it a point to nod respectfully whenever their paths crossed. "Excuse me," came a voice from behind them. They turned to see a young woman in business attire approaching with a panicked expression. "I'm Sarah Mitchell from the International Relations Department. We have a crisis." Tom and Denzel exchanged glances. "What kind of crisis?" Denzel asked. "Our interpreter for the Yamamoto deal just called in sick, and the Japanese delegation is arriving in 20 minutes. Mr. Morrison is beside himself. We've called every agency in the city, but it's too short notice." Sarah's voice trembled slightly. "This deal is worth $42 million, and without proper translation—" The conversation was interrupted by a gentle clearing of the throat. Miguel had approached them, his work uniform neat despite the morning's labor. "Excuse me," he said in perfect, unaccented English. "I couldn't help but overhear. If you need someone who speaks Japanese, I might be able to help." Sarah looked skeptical, but desperation won over prejudice. "You speak Japanese?" Miguel nodded modestly. "Hai, Nihongo ga hanasemasu. Daigaku de benkyū shimashita." The fluency was unmistakable. Sarah's eyes widened. That's perfect Japanese, but this is a complex business negotiation." "I understand," Miguel replied. "I have a degree in international business from UCLA and am familiar with corporate terminology. I've been listening to these types of meetings for years while working." Denzel felt something shift in the air around them. There was more to this quiet man than anyone had realized. "What other languages do you speak?" Tom found himself asking. Miguel's response would change everything. "Besides English and Japanese, I'm fluent in Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, German, Mandarin, and Russian. I also have conversational ability in Arabic." The hallway fell silent, except for the distant hum of air conditioning. Sarah's mouth opened and closed without sound. Tom Brady, who had faced down some of the most intense pressure situations in sports, felt his pulse quicken. Denzel Washington, a man who had portrayed countless complex characters, found himself staring at someone whose real story might be more compelling than any script he'd ever read. "9 languages, Denzel repeated, slowly. "And you're working as a janitor," Miguel finished quietly. "Yes, sir, it pays the bills." In that moment, both men realized they were standing at the threshold of something extraordinary. Not a fairy tale or a Hollywood fantasy, but a real human story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about opportunity, dignity, and the hidden potential that walks among us every day. The clock on the wall showed 2:42 p.m. In 18 minutes, the Japanese delegation would arrive, and Miguel Santos would step out of the shadows for the first time in 3 years. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy as senior partners whispered urgently among themselves. James Morrison, the firm's founding partner, paced behind the mahogany table while checking his Rolex every few seconds. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Los Angeles, but no one was admiring the scenery. "Where the hell is our backup interpreter?" Morrison demanded, his usually composed demeanor cracking under pressure. Sarah Mitchell entered the room with Denzel, Tom, and Miguel following behind her. The sight of the janitor in his work uniform caused several executives to exchange confused glances. "Mr. Morrison," Sarah began, her voice steadier now, "I'd like you to meet Miguel Santos. He's offered to help with the translation." Morrison's face flushed red. "Sarah, this is a $42 million negotiation, not a charity case. We need a professional." "With respect, sir," Miguel interrupted gently, stepping forward. "I am a professional. I have a bachelor's degree in international business from UCLA, graduated magna cum laude, and I've been listening to corporate negotiations in this building for 3 years. I understand the terminology, the cultural nuances, and the business implications of what you're discussing today." The room fell silent. Morrison studied Miguel's face, looking for any sign of uncertainty or bravado. He found neither. Denzel moved closer to the table. "James, we've all made assumptions. I know I have. This man speaks 9 languages fluently. I just heard him speak Japanese like a native." "9 languages?" asked Patricia Wells, the firm's senior partner. "That's unusual." Miguel nodded respectfully. "My parents were diplomats. I grew up in embassy communities around the world. Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Paris, Beijing, Moscow. Languages weren't subjects to study. They were tools for survival and connection." Tom Brady leaned forward in his chair. "Why didn't you ever mention this? Why are you working as a janitor with credentials like that?" For the first time, Miguel's composure wavered slightly. "When my parents died in a car accident 5 years ago, I was completing my master's degree in international relations at Georgetown. I had to drop out to settle their affairs and pay off medical debts. By the time I was ready to re-enter the job market, I'd been out of school for 2 years with no corporate experience and a resume gap that was difficult to explain." He paused, gathering himself. "I applied for entry-level positions at dozens of firms, but no one would take a chance on someone who looked good on paper but had never worked in corporate America. The janitor position here was the only job that would pay enough to cover my apartment and allow me to slowly pay down the debt." Morrison's expression softened slightly. "And you've been here 3 years, listening to our meetings." "Not intentionally eavesdropping," Miguel clarified quickly. "But yes, I've absorbed a great deal about how this firm operates, your clients' needs, and the standard negotiation practices. It's been like an unofficial graduate education in corporate law and business development." The intercom crackled to life. "Mr. Morrison, the Yamamoto delegation has arrived and is being escorted to conference room A." Morrison looked around the room at the faces of his colleagues, then at Denzel and Tom, who had both invested significantly in the firm's expansion into entertainment and sports law. Finally, his gaze settled on Miguel. "Son," Morrison said slowly, "if you can pull this off, if you can help us close this deal, we need to have a serious conversation about your future here." Miguel straightened his shoulders. "I won't let you down, sir." As they prepared to move to the larger conference room, Patricia Wells approached Miguel. "I have to ask, how do we know you can handle the pressure? Corporate negotiations can be intense, especially with this much money on the line." Miguel smiled for the first time since the conversation had begun. "Ma'am, I've spent 3 years cleaning these offices, working double shifts to make ends meet, while watching people in $1,000 suits, discuss opportunities I dreamed of being part of. If I can handle that kind of pressure every single day, I think I can handle a business meeting. Denzel clapped Miguel on the shoulder. That's the kind of attitude that changes everything. Tom? Tom Brady nodded, his competitive instincts recognizing something familiar in Miguel's quiet determination. Let's go make history. As they filed out of the room toward what would either be Miguel's moment of triumph or devastating failure, none of them could have predicted that this impromptu translation session would become the foundation for one of the most successful business partnerships in Los Angeles history. The Japanese delegation was waiting, their expectations high and their patience limited. Miguel Santos, still in his janitor's uniform, was about to step into the spotlight he had been preparing for his entire life. Conference Room A was the firm's crown jewel, a spacious area with a polished granite table that could seat 20 state-of-the-art presentation equipment and a view that encompassed everything from the Hollywood Hills to the Pacific Ocean. Today, it felt like a courtroom where Miguel Santos was both defendant and attorney. The Japanese delegation had arrived precisely on time, as expected. Hiroshi Yamamoto, CEO of Yamamoto Entertainment International, sat at the head of the table with 4 colleagues flanking him. All were impeccably dressed in dark suits, their expressions professionally neutral but alert. They had flown from Tokyo specifically for this meeting, and the weight of that journey hung in the air. Morrison made the introductions in English, explaining the last-minute interpreter change with careful diplomacy. Yamamoto-san nodded politely, but his eyes showed a flicker of concern when they settled on Miguel's work uniform. Miguel stepped forward and bowed appropriately. Yamamoto-san, hajimemashite. Watashi no namae wa Miguel Santos desu. Kyo wa oitogashi. Naka, arigatou gozaimasu. The change in Yamamoto's demeanor was immediate and unmistakable. His eyebrows raised slightly, and he responded in rapid Japanese, testing Miguel's comprehension with a complex question about the contract's subsidiary rights clauses. Miguel answered fluently, not only translating the technical terms accurately, but explaining the American legal context in a way that demonstrated deep understanding of both languages and business practices. The other Japanese executives exchanged impressed glances. Denzel watched the interaction with growing amazement. This wasn't just translation, it was cultural bridge building at the highest level. Yamamoto-san appreciates the firm's flexibility in accommodating today's meeting, Miguel relayed to the room. However, he has specific concerns about the intellectual property protections for Japanese content adapted for American audiences. For the next 2 hours, Miguel became more than an interpreter. He became a cultural ambassador, helping both sides understand not just what was being said, but why it mattered to the other party. When Morrison's team expressed concerns about creative control, Miguel explained to the Japanese delegation the American entertainment industry's collaborative approach. When Yamamoto worried about preserving the integrity of Japanese storytelling traditions, Miguel helped Morrison understand the deeper cultural significance beyond mere commercial considerations. Tom Brady found himself taking notes, not about the business deal, but about Miguel's performance. The man displayed the same kind of calm under pressure that Tom had witnessed in championship games, but with an added layer of cultural sensitivity and intellectual agility that was remarkable to watch. The breakthrough moment came when Yamamoto mentioned, almost in passing, his company's expansion plans into Latin American markets. The other interpreters throughout his career had always skipped over these casual comments, focusing only on the immediate contract terms. Miguel paused in his translation and addressed Yamamoto directly in Japanese. "Excuse me, Yamamoto-san. But I couldn't help but notice your interest in Latin American expansion. If I may suggest, Mr. Morrison's firm has excellent connections in that market through their entertainment clients." He then turned to Morrison. "Sir, Yamamoto-san just mentioned they're looking to expand into Latin America next year. This could be a much larger partnership opportunity than just this current project." Morrison's eyes lit up. The current deal was worth $42 million, but exclusive representation for Yamamoto's Latin American expansion could be worth 10 times that amount. What followed was an entirely new conversation, one that might never have happened without Miguel's cultural awareness and initiative. Within an hour, they had outlined not just the original deal, but a comprehensive partnership that would make Morrison and Associates the exclusive American legal representatives for all of Yamamoto Entertainment's Western Hemisphere operations. As the meeting concluded with handshakes and mutual expressions of satisfaction, Yamamoto approached Miguel directly. In English, he said, "Young man, your skills are exceptional. If you ever consider a career change, Yamamoto Entertainment would be honored to discuss opportunities with you." Miguel bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Yamamoto-san. That's very kind." After the Japanese delegation departed, the conference room fell into stunned silence. Patricia Wells was the first to speak. Did we just turn a $42 million deal into a $400 million partnership? Morrison loosened his tie, something his colleagues had rarely seen him do. "Miguel, I need to ask you something, and I want a completely honest answer. Why haven't you been working in business development or international relations? With your skills, you should be running your own consulting firm." Miguel sat down for the first time since the meeting began, suddenly looking exhausted. "Mr. Morrison, we've applied for over 200 positions in the last 3 years. I've had my resume professionally rewritten 4 times. I've taken online courses to stay current with industry trends. But every time I get to an interview, they see a gap in traditional corporate experience and decide to go with someone who fits their expectations better." He paused, looking around the room at faces that were now seeing him completely differently than they had 3 hours earlier. "The truth is, I've been working here not just to pay bills, but hoping that someday someone might notice that the guy cleaning the conference rooms actually understands what's being discussed in them." Denzel shook his head slowly. 3 years. You've been here 3 years and we've all been blind." Tom Brady stood up and extended his hand to Miguel. "Not anymore. Not after today." Morrison was already reaching for his phone. "Miguel, I'm calling. An emergency partners meeting for tomorrow morning. We need to discuss your future here, and I guarantee it won't involve a janitor's cart." As the room emptied, Miguel remained seated, still processing what had just happened. In one afternoon, he had gone from invisible to indispensable, but he knew the real test wasn't just whether he could perform under pressure. It was whether this opportunity would lead to lasting change, or whether he'd return to the shadows once the excitement wore off. Outside the conference room windows, Los Angeles sparkled in the evening light, a city of dreams where sometimes, just sometimes, those dreams came true for those patient enough to wait for their moment. The emergency partners meeting convened at 8 a.m. sharp in Morrison's private office. The space, normally reserved for the firm's most sensitive discussions, felt different today, charged with the energy of possibility. Patricia Wells, James Morrison, and 2 other senior partners sat around the leather-appointed table, while Denzel and Tom joined via video conference from their respective offices. Miguel had been asked to arrive at 8:30, giving the partners a time to discuss their unprecedented situation privately. "In 35 years of practice," Morrison began, "I've never encountered anything quite like yesterday. We have an employee whose actual capabilities are so far beyond his current role that it's almost absurd, Patricia nodded, reviewing the notes she'd compiled overnight. "I've done some research. Miguel Santos graduated magna cum laude from UCLA with a 3.87 GPA. His professors still remember him. Dr. Elizabeth Chen from the International Business Department called him one of the most naturally gifted students she'd taught in 20 years. "What about his background check from when we hired him?" asked Robert Klein, another senior partner. "Standard janitor position. We verified his address, ran a basic criminal check, confirmed his work authorization. We never looked at his education because it wasn't relevant to the job he was applying for," Morrison admitted with obvious regret. Tom's voice came through the speakers clearly. "The question isn't what we missed 3 years ago. The question is what we do now. That man turned a $42 million deal into what could become our biggest client relationship ever," Denzel added. "And he did it while wearing a janitor's uniform with no preparation time, in front of people who had never seen him as anything more than part of the furniture. That kind of performance under pressure is extraordinary." At 8:30 precisely, Miguel knocked on the office door. He entered wearing the same work uniform, but there was something different about his posture. Not arrogant, but no longer apologetic for taking up space. "Miguel, please sit down," Morrison gestured to the empty chair. "We need to discuss your future here." "I appreciate this opportunity to talk, Mr. Morrison," Miguel replied. "But before we begin, I want to be completely transparent about something." The room fell silent. "I've been offered 3 positions since yesterday evening," Miguel continued. "Word travels fast in the international business community. Yamamoto-san contacted 2 colleagues before he even left the building, and they've reached out to me directly." Patricia's eyebrows rose. 3 job offers in less than 24 hours. "Yes, ma'am. One from a translation services company, one from an international consulting firm, and one from Yamamoto Entertainment International themselves. They're offering to sponsor me for a work visa to join their Tokyo headquarters." Morrison leaned back in his chair. The negotiation had shifted before it even began. "What are they offering?" Tom asked from the screen. Miguel hesitated. The consulting firm offered $85,000 plus benefits to start. Yamamoto Entertainment offered $95,000 plus relocation assistance. The translation company offered per-project work that could reach $70,000 annually. The silence stretched for several seconds. Miguel currently earned $32,000 a year as a janitor. "And what would you like from us?" Morrison asked directly. "I'd like the opportunity to prove that yesterday wasn't a fluke," Miguel replied. "I don't need the highest salary or the fanciest title. I need a chance to build a career where my skills are valued and utilized. I've spent 3 years watching this firm operate, and I believe I can contribute significantly to your international expansion goals." Denzel leaned forward on the video screen. "Miguel, what's your long-term vision? If everything went perfectly, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Miguel smiled slightly. "I'd like to head Morrison and Associates International Division, a department that doesn't currently exist but should. Los Angeles is becoming increasingly global, and your entertainment and sports clients need representation that understands not just American law, but international markets and cultural nuances." "That's a significant vision," Patricia observed. "What makes you think you could build an entire division?" "Because I've already identified 12 potential clients who have inquired about international services in the past 2 years, Miguel replied without hesitation. "I've been filing and organizing documents for 3 years. I know which clients have asked about representation in Asia, Europe, and Latin America. I know which deals fell through because of communication barriers or cultural misunderstandings." "Robert," Klein looked impressed despite himself. "You've been paying attention." "Mr. Klein, I've been preparing for this opportunity my entire life, even when I didn't know when it would come." Morrison stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. Miguel, here's what we're prepared to offer. Director of International Relations, $75,000 starting salary, full benefits, and a performance bonus structure tied to new international business development. You'll report directly to Patricia and have a budget to hire an assistant within 6 months. Miguel absorbed the offer. It was less money than 2 of his other opportunities, but it offered something more valuable, the chance to build something from the ground up. "I accept," he said without hesitation. "Don't you want to think about it?" Patricia asked, surprised. Miguel shook his head. "Ma'am, I've been thinking about it for 3 years. This firm gave me a job when I needed one, even if it wasn't a job I wanted. Loyalty matters to me. And besides," he smiled, "I have 3 years of insider knowledge about how this place really works. That's worth more than the salary difference." Tom Brady's laugh came through the speakers. "Now that's the kind of competitive advantage I understand." Morrison returned to his seat. "There's one condition, Miguel. We're going to announce your promotion to the entire firm this afternoon. We want everyone to understand that talent can be found anywhere, and that we're committed to recognizing it wherever it exists." Miguel's eyes widened. "Sir, that's not necessary." "Yes, it is," Morrison interrupted. "We missed your potential for 3 years because we made assumptions. We won't make that mistake again, and we want to make sure everyone else understands that message clearly." As the meeting concluded with handshakes and congratulations, Miguel found himself thinking about his parents. They had always told him that opportunities come to those who prepare for them, even when they can't see them coming. Standing in Morrison's office, no longer a janitor but not yet fully transformed into the executive he was becoming, Miguel Santos realized that sometimes the most profound changes happen not in dramatic moments, but in quiet conversations where people finally see each other clearly. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time in 3 years, he was exactly where he belonged. 6 months later, the 44th floor of the Morrison & Associates building looked dramatically different. What had once been unused storage space was now a bustling international division with Miguel's nameplate reading Director of International Relations mounted outside a corner office with the same stunning city view that had once been just a backdrop to his janitorial duties. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Miguel's first weeks in his new role had been met with skepticism from some staff members who struggled to see past his previous position. But results spoke louder than prejudice. Within 90 days, he had closed deals with 3 new international clients, expanded the Yamamoto partnership into a comprehensive legal services agreement, and established Morrison & Associates as the go-to firm for entertainment industry clients seeking global representation. Today marked a special milestone, the grand opening celebration for the international division, with clients, partners, and staff gathering to recognize how far they'd all come. Denzel Washington arrived early, finding Miguel in his office reviewing presentation notes for the evening's festivities. The office was tastefully decorated with artifacts from Miguel's travels and framed photographs from recent business trips to Tokyo, São Paulo, and London. "Ready for your big night?" Denzel asked, settling into one of the leather chairs facing Miguel's desk. Miguel looked up, smiling, but showing traces of the nervousness that still surfaced before major events. "As ready as I can be. It's still surreal sometimes, you know. 6 months ago, I was emptying these wastebaskets. And now you're filling them with contracts worth millions," Denzel observed. "How does it feel?" Miguel set down his papers and considered the question seriously, grateful, challenged, sometimes overwhelmed by the responsibility, but mostly validated. "For the first time in years, I feel like I'm using all of who I am, not just a small part." Tom Brady appeared in the doorway, having overheard the last part of the conversation. "Mind if I join this philosophical discussion?" please. Miguel gestured to the other chair. I was just telling Denzel how different everything feels now. Tom sat down, his expression thoughtful. Miguel, I've been meaning to ask you something. Do you ever regret not taking one of those other job offers? The money was better, and you'd have been working with established international divisions instead of building from scratch. Miguel shook his head without hesitation. Never. Not once. Those other positions would have been safe, comfortable, predictable, but they wouldn't have been mine, you know? This division, these relationships, this work, I built it. When I walk through these offices now, I don't see the place where I used to clean. I see the place where I learned to dream bigger. That's profound, Denzel said. You know, I've been thinking about your story a lot lately. Not for a movie, he added quickly, seeing Miguel's expression, but because it challenges some assumptions I didn't even realize I was making. What kind of assumptions? Miguel asked. About visibility and value, Denzel replied. How many talented people do we walk past every day without really seeing them? How many opportunities do we miss because someone doesn't look like what we expect success to look like? Tom nodded. It's like scouting. Sometimes the best players are the ones no one else is watching. They're developing their skills, studying the game, waiting for their chance. Miguel stood and walked to his window, looking out at the city that had become his stage. The hardest part wasn't being overlooked, he said quietly. It was believing in myself when no one else did. 3 years of rejection letters and closed doors. There were days I wondered if maybe everyone else was right, if I was overestimating my abilities. But you kept preparing, Denzel observed. Because that's all I could control, Miguel replied. I couldn't control when opportunity would come or what form it would take, but I could control whether I'd be ready when it arrived. A soft knock interrupted their conversation. Patricia Wells entered, followed by James Morrison and several other partners. Miguel, the clients are starting to arrive downstairs, Patricia announced. Yamamoto-san sent a beautiful floral arrangement, and the Brazilian delegation brought gifts for everyone. Morrison approached Miguel's desk, carrying a wrapped package. Before we go downstairs, the partners wanted to give you something. Miguel unwrapped the gift carefully, revealing a beautiful leather portfolio embossed with Miguel Santos, Director of International Relations, Morrison and Associates. It's gorgeous, Miguel said, genuinely moved. Thank you all. There's something inside, Morrison added with a smile. Miguel opened the portfolio to find a letter on official letterhead. As he read, his expression shifted from curiosity to amazement. We're promoting you to Senior Director, Patricia explained, and we're expanding the international division to include offices in 3 additional cities. Miguel, you're not just running a department anymore. You're building a network. The room erupted in congratulations and applause. Through it all, Miguel stood holding the letter, thinking about the journey that had brought him to this moment. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down and the last clients departed, Miguel found himself alone in his office. The city lights twinkled below, and he could see his reflection in the window, no longer the invisible janitor, but not entirely comfortable with being the center of attention either. Denzel and Tom appeared in his doorway one final time. How are you processing all of this? Tom asked. Miguel turned from the window. I keep thinking about something my father used to say. He told me that dignity isn't about the work you do. It's about how you do the work. When I was cleaning these offices, I tried to do it with dignity. Now that I'm running meetings in them, I'm trying to do that with dignity too. That's why this story matters, Denzel said. It's not just about career success. It's about human potential and the courage to keep believing in yourself when the world can't see your value yet. And it's about organizations being brave enough to look beyond their assumptions, Tom added. Morrison and Associates didn't just gain an employee, they discovered they'd been overlooking talent that was right in front of them. Miguel smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility and possibility in equal measure. The best part is, this is just the beginning. There are probably dozens of people in this building alone who have talents and dreams that haven't been recognized yet. "So what's next?" Denzel asked. "Tomorrow I start interviewing candidates for the new positions," Miguel replied, "and I'm going to make sure we look in places and at people that others might overlook, because talent isn't always dressed in a business suit and carrying an MBA. Sometimes it's wearing a janitor's uniform and speaking 9 languages while emptying the trash." As they prepared to leave, Tom shook Miguel's hand one final time. "You know what I'm most impressed by? You never became bitter. 3 years of being invisible, and you still chose to help when you could have just stayed silent." Miguel considered this. Bitterness would have been easier, but it wouldn't have changed anything. Hope and preparation, that's what changes things. Walking out of the building together, the 3 men reflected on how a single moment of recognition had transformed not just one life, but an entire organization's understanding of where talent might be found. The city stretched out before them, full of hidden potential waiting to be discovered, and Miguel Santos, former janitor turned senior director, was proof that sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the most ordinary circumstances, waiting patiently for someone to listen carefully enough to hear them. In the distance, the lights of other office buildings twinkled like stars, each one potentially sheltering dreams that hadn't been recognized yet. But after today, perhaps a few more people would be watching, listening, and ready to discover the remarkable in the seemingly routine. The story had come full circle, but in the best possible way. It was really just the beginning.